Harper Audio presents Pieces of My Heart by Robert J. Wagner with Scott Iman. Read by Robert Wagner. Copyright 2008 by Robert J. Wagner. Production copyright 2008 by HarperCollins Publishers. I was 12 years old when my future passed in front of me. My father had moved our family from Michigan to California in 1937 when I was 7 years old, and I began working at the Bel Air stables in 1942. There was no Bel Air hotel yet, but housing sites in the neighborhood were selling fast. One day, I took a piece of corrugated tin from some construction scrap, bent the front end up, and fashioned a sled, which I stored by a hill on the 11th hole at the Bel Air Country Club. On breaks from the stables, I would get on my sled and slide down the hill where I would come to rest just under a cluster of trees by the edge of the fairway. And then I would sit on the pine needles at the base of the hill and watch the golfers go by. It was a very boyish thing to do, but that's what I was, a 12-year-old boy. On this particular day, in 1942, I saw a foursome heading off the 11th tee. They had just hit their tee shots and were walking toward the fairway. I was sitting there 10 or 20 yards from where their shots had landed. As they got closer, they came into focus, and I could see that the foursome consisted of Cary Grant, Fred Astaire, Clark Gable, and Randolph Scott. I was transfixed. It was the most amazing experience, not just because I had grown up seeing these men at the movies, at the Fox and Bruin theaters in Westwood. It was because they looked freshly minted. They say that some movie stars are disappointing when seen in the flesh, smaller, less prepossessing than they appear on the screen. Not these men. They inhabited life as securely as they inhabited the screen. Put it another way, they filled the room, even if the room was outdoors. In those days, nobody wore signature brands. Each great star was his own signature brand. Fred Astaire didn't wear Lacoste or Brooks Brothers. He had his own style, a tie knotted around his waist instead of a belt. He was Fred Astaire. To see them there in the flesh was an amazing experience because these were not men who went out on the town a great deal or hobnobbed in restaurants. They stopped and hit their second shots. Astaire had the best, most rhythmic swing by far, followed closely by Randolph Scott, and then began walking toward the green. I don't think they saw me, but the important thing was that I saw them. I realized at that moment that I wanted to be in that club. Looking back, I see that this was when I made up my mind to be in the movies, to be an actor. Within 2 years, I was walking up and down Hollywood Boulevard, waiting to be discovered. My general theory, insofar as I had a general theory, was that if Lana Turner could be discovered on Sunset Boulevard, I could be discovered on Hollywood Boulevard. I wore a dark brown leather jacket, had my hair slicked back, and would pause in front of plate-glass windows, staring admiringly at my own reflection. The collar was up, and if I say so myself, I had the look. Someone told me that D.W. Griffith hung around the Hollywood Hotel, so I walked over to the corner of Hollywood and Highland, and it was true. There was Griffith, a dignified, elderly gentleman sitting quietly in a rocking chair on the veranda, observing the hustle of Hollywood in wartime. Nobody shared my fascination with my own reflection. That would come later, but that didn't matter. I wanted to be in the movies, and I was going to be in the movies. It was just a question of time. Robert J. Wagner, my father, was born in Kalamazoo, Michigan in 1890, but he left home when he was 10 years old. I have no doubt he was abused. The Germans of that era would punch their children in the face just to let them know who was boss. My dad spent his adolescence selling newspapers on the streets of Kalamazoo, working in railroad stations, in bars, wherever there was a paying job. Because he was so estranged from his parents,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?